Hi everybody. Let's start this lesson with the following quote. Good programmers code, but great programmers, they reuse code. And this is exactly what you're going to learn in this video. We need to start reusing our code as soon as possible, so it's easier to write and manage repeating code. Anytime you catch yourself copy-pasting certain code, consider making it a function in your library of snippets, from where you can easily import and reuse them across multiple scripts. Let's open our PyCharm project and create a library folder. Right click on that extension folder and we need to create a new directory. We have to call it leap. This way pyRevit can automatically detect and use it. Then inside of this folder we need to create dunder init file. This file signals to Python that this folder should be treated like a Python package, so we could import different classes and methods from our files. Then inside of this leap folder, let's create example file where we will start writing our reusable code. I'm going to create a simple test print function to demonstrate you how we can import and use it in our scripts. This function is just going to print that it was imported from example.py file. Then, to better organize our future functions, we can also use nested folders here. I will create a folder for snippets, and we'll also have to place dunder init file inside of each nested folder. Then I will create a file for my selection snippets, and also notice that I placed underscore in the beginning of the file name. This is because in the past I used to name a module similar to some of my common variable names, and this has crashed my Python code without explaining me what did I do wrong, so this might protect you from this similar mistake. Inside of this file, we would code same as usual. Let's add UTF-8 encoding, import our main variables. You could also paste your template file here, but it's not necessary for this example. Then we can create a function that will get selected elements. We'll cover selection in its own module in more depth, but for now, we'll use a simple example of getting selected element IDs. Let's prepare a list of selected elements, then we can iterate for element ID in UI.doc.selection.getElementIDs, and then convert this element ID in our actual element by using doc.getElement method. And then add it to our selected elements list. And lastly, we need to return this list out of this function. We could also make it a simple list comprehension to fit all of it in one line. To do this, create a list, and inside we need to write first what's going to be added to the list, and then we need to declare our for loop. And these two snippets are going to have exactly the same elements returned. And now we need to create a new button in pyRevit to test it, or we can use our first button that we have created earlier, which only has some print statements. Let's open this script and clean it up. To make it easier for us to work with our custom library, we can also add references to our interpreter to get auto-suggestions to easily access doc strings. Open your interpreter settings, then click here on Show All, select the right virtual environment, and then click on this icon to add a new path to your references. Provide absolute path to your leap folder, and now it should work. So first of all, we need to import these two functions that we have created in our library. I'll write from example import testPrint, and then from snippets.selection import getSelectedElement. And you saw that I already have auto-suggestion for my custom library as well, which is really helpful. So now let's test these functions. This one is supposed to print some kind of text, and the second function is going to return a list of selected elements. So let's print these elements as well to prove that it works. Also, if you remember, in PyCharm you can click on Ctrl-Q to access doc strings of your imported functions and classes. And if you click it 2 times, then it will be displayed in a side menu. And that's why I always recommend you to write doc strings, especially for functions in your library, because you're going to reuse it quite often and sometimes you need to reference documentation. And lastly, let's go to Revit and test this button. I'm not going to select anything and just click on the button. And here's the print statement from example file, and then it's followed by empty list of selection. And if I select all of these walls and run it again, this time I get all of these walls printed as well. And this is how we reuse our code. Also, I have another advice for you. If you want your functions and classes to work properly when you jump between multiple open projects, I would recommend you to include UIDoc in your functions as an argument when you need to use doc or UIDoc. The reason for using UIDoc is because we can easily get document by using document property. But the main reason for using it as an argument, because when you jump between different projects, everything was declared in the library gets executed once and then it's remembered by pyRevit. And it will only be updated when you reload your pyRevit. So when you will execute this function in project A, it will be remembered as document of project A. And then when you open project B and run it again, it will still remember the document from project A, because this document was declared in the library folder. And also, when you work on a function in a library and you execute it with your button, usually we have to reload pyRevit for any changes to take place. You can't even imagine how much time I wasted rewriting my function in library over and over to see no difference, until I realized that I have to reload pyRevit to see any changes. So now you know how to create and manage your custom library, and I can't stress enough that you should always consider making reusable functions in your library. I wish that somebody told me that in the beginning of my programming journey. So every time you catch yourself copy-pasting a large code snippet, consider adding it to your library so it's easier to manage and you can always reuse it. And remember, good programmers code, but great programmers, they reuse code. And if you also intend on using Revit API in Dynamo Python nodes, then be sure to check this video to see the difference between pyRevit and Dynamo syntax. And it's not so different, to be honest.